Every single product but concealer has already been applied to my skin, and even though I'm only missing that one product, that concealer, it makes a massive difference to how my overall makeup looks. I look drained, I look tired, I look weary, and I don't want to look that way. However, equally, if you apply your concealer incorrectly, you can look just as drained, just as weary, and you can look dry, you can look crusty, and you can look 10 years older. So in this video, I am going to be giving you some tips and tricks on how I am applying my concealer at the moment to make sure that my concealer does not crease, does not look patchy, does not look cakey, does not move, doesn't look powdery, doesn't look crusty, all the way through the day. So although I do believe that these techniques work best with a self-setting concealer, I am going to be using the Estee Lauder Double Wear Stay in Place Concealer for this video today. I have used the techniques with other more lightweight concealers, more light coverage concealers, like the Victoria Beckham Concealer Pen, and had just as good results, just as much success, so hopefully you will too. First up, prep the skin underneath the eyes. Incredibly important. So I already have all of my skincare on, including my SPF, but just before I go in with concealer, I like to take the ROC Multi-Correction Revive and Glow Eye Balm and rub that underneath the eye. So I like to concentrate on that dark circle and anywhere where I get quite a bit of creasing. That may be out here for you, but it's in this middle section for me. Now, I don't leave it like that. I like to dab this in place. I don't like to leave it on the surface of the skin and go straight in with concealer. If you feel like you like to leave this alone and not push this into the skin, just wait around about 2 minutes before you go in with concealer. Because I've pushed this into the skin, I go in with concealer straight away. I'm using the Stay in Place Concealer in the shade 2N. I pop this on the back of my hand. Really important to warm through the product. Don't go straight underneath the eyes without warming it through. If you warm the product through, it's going to melt into the skin much, much better and give you more coverage with very little product. The more product you use, the more chance it's got of spreading all over your face and going really creasy throughout the day. We definitely don't want that. I'm using the Nikki LaRose N16 brush and I'm really packing that into the bristles from the back of my hand. This concealer is already warm. So then I'm just going to go in and with a very light hand, pop this underneath my eye. I don't go all the way underneath the lash line. I don't feel the need to do this, but I'm just going in the areas of darkness and right in that inner corner where I do get quite a lot of discoloration. You may get some discoloration on the outer edge. Dot that on there if you do. Today I don't seem to have a lot of discoloration there, so I'm just going to concentrate on this middle section. Then I leave it there for around about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and go on to the rest of my face. I have put the rest of my products on already today, so I don't need to do that. So it's just a sit and wait moment. Very important that you do this though, and I'll show you why in just a second. It's really important that while you're waiting for the concealer to dry down, you are as expressive as possible. Just emulating those normal facial movements that you're going to be making throughout the day, laughing, smiling, talking. So just make sure that you don't keep your under eye perfectly still while the concealer is drying down, because you want to make sure that you haven't applied too much underneath the eye. Even when the concealer dries, it will still move with those facial movements throughout the day. So if you've applied a little bit too much, that movement will start to bunch up and it will start to crease. So if you see any creasing forming, take a cotton bud, Q-tip, and then just remove that excess product. Where the creasing is, remove the excess bunched up product. And then once that's gone, take a clean brush. I'm going to be using the Refa 1. And I'm just going to make sure that everything is perfectly blended. Now I've removed that excess. Now you can wait again if you want to, just to make sure that's not going to move again. I tend not to do this. One time is enough for me. That is going to stay the way that it's laid down all day, but I am going to add a little bit of powder over the top, and I do have a tip for you here as well. I do like to use a powder puff to set my under eye makeup. However, I have learnt this recently that if you apply powder to the powder puff, even if you're taking a lot of the excess off on the back of your hand, if you're pressing directly underneath the eye, especially if you have loose or crepey skin, you can often miss getting really deep into those furrows, those wrinkles, those crepey bits, those crinkles. So before you go in with a powder puff or a sponge, I like to take some of the powder on a really fluffy brush. Now I'm using the Nikki LaRose N14 brush for this. I am tapping off every single little bit of excess because I want very little powder underneath my eye. I'm then going to make a surprised face and just dust that powder underneath the eye. Because I'm doing this with a brush, and I'm making that surprised face, really wide-eyed face, I'm getting the product really into all of those crinkles. I do think it's a better finish doing this with a powder puff, so as soon as that has done, as soon as I've got the powder into the crinkles, I'm then going to take my powder puff, get plenty of product on that powder puff. Don't worry about over applying because you are going to be tapping it off on the back of your hand and then pressing that in and really smoothing that out. Look at that. Look at the difference. And it will stay like that all day. If you feel like the powder is quite drying underneath your eyes, which sometimes it is for me, depending on the quality of my under eyes, depending on whether I have really dry under eyes that day or quite oily under eyes that day, I will spritz over a little bit of setting spray if I feel the need. I don't feel the need today. The Rock Eye Balm definitely did its job and took away every single little last bit of dryness that I had underneath my eyes. So I'm not going to spray a setting spray on underneath my eyes, but you could if you wanted to. What a difference one product can make to an entire makeup look. I look more refreshed, more awake, just more put together, more polished, and it's all down to that concealer and the concealer placement and application, because I know that with this application, with these techniques, my concealer is not going to go anywhere. It is not going to crease. It is not going to go crusty, cakey, look dry or patchy. So if you do struggle with concealer application, regardless of what concealer that may be, whether that be a full coverage or a light coverage concealer, self-setting or not self-setting, try these techniques out. They're nothing new, but all put together, especially with the Rock Revive and Glow Eye Balm, which is an absolute game changer, can really change the look of your makeup, change your application, and just make everything come together more sweetly and make it last a lot longer. I really hope you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you do feel like somebody else in your life might find this equally as helpful, please give it a share. Also, please don't forget to like and subscribe before you leave. Hope to see you all in the next one. Bye everyone.